AITA for refusing to let my brother's family move in with me, even though they're going through a rough patch. I, 34F, have lived in my apartment for the past 5 years. It's modest but comfortable, and I've worked hard to create a home that suits my life and my needs. I'm independent, and I like things in my space to be orderly, quiet, and manageable. I live alone, and I've always been very clear with my family that I value my personal space. My brother, Ben, 36M, has been married to his wife, Laura, 35F, for about 10 years. They have 2 kids, ages 7 and 4. For the past few years, Ben has struggled with his job, and Laura has had her own career stresses, compounded by a couple of difficult family situations. It's no secret in the family that they've been having a rough time financially and emotionally, but I've tried to support them in ways that don't compromise my own boundaries. Sending care packages, babysitting occasionally, and helping with errands when needed. A few weeks ago, Ben called me in tears. He said that they were between homes temporarily and asked if he, Laura, and the kids could move in with me for a few weeks until they got back on their feet. I was taken aback. My apartment is a 2-bedroom place. I live alone in one, and the other is my spare room. It's cozy, but by no means spacious enough to comfortably house 5 people for an extended period. I told him I wasn't sure it would work. I explained that I have a strict routine, work from home, and that my apartment really isn't equipped for that many people. I offered to help in other ways, finding them a short-term rental, helping with furniture, pitching in for a hotel if needed, even babysitting the kids a few days a week so they could get organized. Ben got frustrated and said, "You're my sister. Family helps family. This is a crisis." I reiterated my boundaries, saying I understood it was hard, but I couldn't have them living with me. The argument escalated. Ben said that I was being selfish and that I didn't understand what family means. He implied that I was prioritizing my comfort over his children's welfare, which hurt because I genuinely do care about them. I tried to explain that helping doesn't always mean sacrificing my own stability. Sometimes it means helping them find resources or assisting in ways that are sustainable for both parties. He accused me of hiding behind excuses and hung up. The next day, our parents called me. They were upset and said I should do the right thing because family comes first. I reminded them that I had offered multiple forms of support, transportation, babysitting, financial assistance for temporary housing, but they said that none of that counted because it wasn't the same as having them under your roof. I've stuck to my boundaries, and since then, Ben has barely spoken to me. Laura texted me saying she's disappointed I wouldn't help and that maybe I wasn't really part of the family. I haven't responded because I feel like any response would either escalate things or come across as insincere. Other family members have started sending me messages trying to guilt me, and it's been stressful because I thought I was being reasonable. I do feel bad for the kids. They have been through a lot and probably could use a stable place to stay. I also worry about how my actions are being interpreted and whether I'm being too rigid. On the other hand, I know that if I allowed them to move in, it would create a stressful situation for everyone. My apartment isn't set up for that kind of arrangement. I would lose personal space, my work could be affected, and I worry about tension between me and Ben spilling over with the kids around. I've considered compromising, like letting them stay for a night or two, but I feel like that might open the door to longer-term expectations. I've also looked into resources like local family shelters or temporary rental assistance programs, but Ben seems resistant to that idea because he wants a family solution. I am conflicted. I want to help, but I also need to protect my own living space and mental health. I feel like I've offered reasonable alternatives, but my family is treating me like I've abandoned them. AITA for refusing to let my brother and his family move in, even though they're struggling? I'm trying to be compassionate while maintaining my boundaries, but I'm not sure if I'm failing as a sister and aunt. Everyone keeps framing this as family over everything, and I feel like my practical concerns are being dismissed. I want to support my brother without compromising my own life, but now it feels like I'm being punished for that. The situation has put me in a very uncomfortable position because I love my brother and his kids, but I also know that living together in my tiny apartment for an extended period would be stressful and probably lead to resentment on both sides. I want to do the right thing, but I also want to be honest about what I can handle. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother's family move in with me, even though they're going through a rough patch. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she demanded I compromise my home. I, 33F, have always been close to my family, especially my younger sister, Clara, 29F. We grew up in a small town, but I moved to the city after college for work and bought a modest house about 6 years ago. I love my home. It's small but cozy, with a yard I've spent a lot of time landscaping and decorating. I always imagined hosting family gatherings there, but nothing on the scale of a wedding. Clara got engaged last year to her fiancé, Mark, 31M. They're both sweet, but extremely particular and have very strong opinions about how things should be done. When she called me to tell me they wanted a small, intimate wedding, I assumed she meant 40 to 50 people, something manageable in my home. I was genuinely excited. She specifically said she wanted a very personal, at-home wedding with only our closest friends and family. Naturally, I thought my home could accommodate that, and I told her yes without hesitation. A few weeks later, Clara sent me what she called the final guest list. I immediately noticed it was much larger than what we had discussed. Instead of 40 to 50 people, she had listed 120 guests, including people I had never met. I tried to explain that my house simply couldn't handle that many people comfortably, both inside and outside. My backyard is maybe 800 square feet, and my living room can seat 12 people at a stretch. I suggested that perhaps the wedding could be held at a small local hall, or even a friend's larger property, but she insisted she wanted it at my home. Things got tense when I asked about catering and rentals. Clara and Mark expected me to just make it work with my existing furniture and appliances. They assumed I would handle all decorations, food preparation, and logistics, even though I work full-time and have a very busy schedule. When I pointed out that hosting 120 people in my home was unrealistic, Clara got upset, saying I was being unsupportive and selfish. A week later, she came over with Mark and a few friends to measure my house and plan the layout. They immediately started making lists of what I would need to buy or rent. Extra tables, chairs, tents, a portable restroom, generators, and a massive catering order. The tone of the visit felt like an inspection rather than a discussion, and I started to feel overwhelmed. I tried to calmly explain that my home was not suitable for an event of this size, but they kept brushing it off and insisting I could compromise. I asked what compromise meant to them, and Clara said, "You'll figure it out. Just make it work. It's your home." Over the next few weeks, I tried to set boundaries. I told her I could host maybe 40 people, maximum. I offered to help find a suitable venue or contribute financially to one, but I would not be responsible for turning my small property into a wedding venue. Clara responded by saying I wasn't being family-oriented and that she couldn't believe I was putting property before love. At this point, I started to feel a mixture of guilt and frustration because I genuinely wanted to help, but the demands were becoming unreasonable. The breaking point came when Clara sent me a detailed blueprint of the backyard with tents and seating arrangements, asking me to approve it. It included 2 large 20 by 20 tents, a 30-foot buffet table, a bar station, and a stage for a live band. I calculated the space and realized there was no way this would fit without turning my yard into a literal construction zone. I told her I could not approve it and reiterated that my home was not suitable for a wedding of this scale. Clara then accused me of trying to control her wedding and suggested I was being manipulative because I always insist on things my way. Mark chimed in, saying I should just relax and let them plan, which felt dismissive. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to control anything. I was trying to prevent a disaster, but they didn't see it that way. After that conversation, I sent Clara a message saying that I could not host the wedding at my home. I offered alternative solutions, helping rent a small hall, contributing financially to a venue, or even hosting a pre-wedding dinner for a smaller group at my place. Clara replied with a one-word message, "Fine." Since then, she has barely spoken to me. She posted a few passive-aggressive messages on social media about family members not being supportive, which I assume is about me. Our parents are divided. My mom thinks I'm right and that Clara was being unreasonable, but my dad thinks I should have made more sacrifices because it's my sister's wedding. I feel like I'm being unfairly criticized for not wanting to turn my home into an event space for 120 people. I want to be supportive, but I also have my limits. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she demanded I compromise my home for an unrealistic number of guests and responsibilities. I've tried to compromise, suggested alternatives, and even offered financial help. But the expectation that my home and my time should be entirely subordinated to their vision seems unreasonable. I feel guilty because I love my sister, but I also know my home is not a wedding venue, and I don't want to end up resenting her or ruining my property. I haven't seen Clara since that conversation, and I feel like I might be permanently straining our relationship over this. I know weddings can be emotional, but I also think it's okay to have boundaries, even for family. Have any of you dealt with a similar situation? How do you navigate family expectations without sacrificing your own well-being? AITA? AITA for refusing to let my sister use my house for her wedding after she insulted my parenting. I, 34F, have always been close to my sister, Lisa, 30F, at least on the surface. We grew up together, and for most of our adult lives, we shared a fairly cordial relationship. However, things have been strained over the past few years, primarily because of the way she interacts with my kids and the way she perceives my choices as a mother. I have two children, Ethan, 7, and Sophie, 5. I've been a stay-at-home mom for the last 5 years while my husband, Jake, 36M, works a demanding corporate job. Our lifestyle is different from Lisa's. She's very career-focused, doesn't have children, and has a more party-oriented, free-spirited approach to life. That's fine, but the tension between her lifestyle and mine became evident when she started criticizing the way I raise my kids. It all came to a head when she announced her engagement. She and her fiancé, Mark, have been together for 3 years, and I was genuinely happy for her. Shortly after the engagement, she asked if she could have her wedding at our house. I live in a reasonably large house in a suburban neighborhood, and while it's not a mansion, it does have a spacious backyard that could theoretically accommodate her ceremony and reception. I was surprised because she's never shown much interest in my house, and I felt a bit pressured. I asked why she wanted to use our house instead of renting a venue, and she said it would be more intimate and meaningful. I explained to her that while it's technically possible, having a wedding here would be very disruptive. Our kids live here full-time, and the house isn't really designed for a large event. There's limited parking, the backyard is not professionally landscaped for events, and hosting a large party would mean displacing our daily life for several weeks, especially during the planning and cleanup stages. I suggested that she look into small venues or even a local community hall that could handle her guest list comfortably. This is when things escalated. Lisa told me, in a very condescending tone, that I was being selfish and controlling and that I apparently didn't want her to have anything beautiful because I was jealous of her freedom. She implied that my parenting was so restrictive that even my own home couldn't be used for someone else's joy. She said I had become one of those boring, overprotective parents who can't let anyone have fun. I was stunned. I never expected this kind of reaction from her, and I tried to stay calm. I told her that my refusal wasn't about jealousy or control. It was about practicality and protecting my children's routine. I also reminded her that our home is our sanctuary and that hosting a wedding here would fundamentally disrupt our family life. Lisa didn't seem to care. She started listing all the reasons I was wrong, citing that other people managed to host weddings at their homes and that I was being dramatic. She even brought up how our parents had their wedding in the backyard of their first home and claimed that I was ruining family tradition. She kept hammering on my parenting choices, saying that if I wasn't so controlling about Ethan and Sophie, I would understand that her wedding would be a one-day event and wouldn't actually harm anyone. At this point, I felt hurt and attacked. I reminded her politely but firmly that our children's needs come first and that we couldn't just rearrange our lives for a one-day event. I offered to help in other ways, like assisting with planning, helping find a venue, or even hosting a smaller pre-wedding event like a rehearsal dinner, but the actual wedding at our house was off the table. She stormed off and hasn't spoken to me since. Our parents tried to mediate, and while they understand my perspective, they also mentioned that Lisa feels hurt and rejected, and that she can't believe her sister won't support her wedding. I have stuck to my decision, and, frankly, I feel that Lisa's reaction was disproportionate. I think my boundaries are reasonable, and I don't think I owe anyone the use of my home, especially when it would interfere with my children's lives. I feel like she's projecting her frustration and resentment onto me because she's used to being able to dictate events in her social circles without considering the practicalities. Since this incident, Lisa has been passive-aggressive in family group chats, posting pictures of venues she says would have been perfect if someone had a heart. I've tried to ignore it, but it's creating tension with our extended family. My husband supports my decision and agrees that hosting the wedding here would be chaotic and unfair to the kids. I'm now second-guessing myself slightly because of how intense her reaction was, but logically, I still believe I was right. I feel like hosting a wedding at my house is not a favor. It's the huge disruption, and her insults about my parenting crossed a line. I don't want to be the villain in her story, but I also don't want to compromise my children's well-being or feel pressured into doing something that makes me uncomfortable. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my sister use my house for her wedding after she insulted my parenting. Character count, 6,437. AITA for confronting my sister about her behavior at my wedding and causing a huge family fallout. Last year, I, 29F, got married to my partner, Mark, 32M. We had been together for 6 years and had been planning our wedding for almost 2 years. Our families are complicated, and there's a long history of tension between my sister, Emily, 33F, and me, but I thought I could handle it for one day. I should probably start by explaining Emily's personality. She's always been competitive with me, sometimes in subtle ways, other times in very obvious ways. Growing up, she would find ways to one-up me, whether it was grades, attention from our parents, or even friends. As adults, she tries to do it less, but old habits die hard. She's also prone to passive-aggressive comments, and she often tries to manipulate situations to make herself the center of attention. Leading up to the wedding, Emily was difficult. She complained about nearly everything: the dress she had to wear, the hairstylist, the seating arrangements, and even our choice of venue. We tried to accommodate her where we could without compromising our plans, but it was clear nothing we did would be good enough. A few days before the wedding, she dropped a bombshell. I hadn't invited a few of her friends because our guest list was already tight, and she went off on me in front of my parents. She accused me of being selfish and controlling and said that she couldn't believe I would snub her friends. My parents tried to calm her down, but she refused to listen, and I was mortified. I ended up apologizing even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong, just to keep the peace. Wedding day arrived. I was nervous but excited. Emily arrived late, in a dress she hadn't shown me, claiming it was a surprise for everyone, and she immediately started taking selfies in the middle of the aisle while people were being seated. I asked her politely to move to the side, and she rolled her eyes and muttered something about how weddings are meant to be fun. I tried to ignore it and focused on the ceremony. During the vows, Emily decided it would be funny to loudly comment on how emotional I was, saying things like, "Wow, look at you crying. Who knew you could be so dramatic?" I froze for a second, then kept going, but I felt my face turn red. Mark noticed and squeezed my hand. After the ceremony, we moved to the reception. Emily's behavior escalated. She criticized the food, made snide remarks about our decorations, and spent the entire time talking over me when I tried to greet guests. At one point, she cornered my childhood friend, who had helped plan the wedding, and told her that the whole thing is tacky and that she could do better if it were her wedding. I was furious, but I tried to stay composed. Then came the tipping point. We had a photo session scheduled with all the family members. Emily refused to participate, claiming she didn't like how photos made her look. I explained that this was important to me and asked her again. She snapped, saying, "Why do you always make everything about you? It's exhausting. I'm not your prop for Instagram." I had had enough. I calmly told her that her behavior had been disrespectful all day and that she needed to either participate in the photos or leave the reception. She said she wouldn't leave, but also refused to take part. I told her again that this wasn't negotiable and that if she didn't join, I would have to ask my parents to escort her out. Things escalated quickly. Emily started yelling at me in front of our extended family, accusing me of embarrassing her and ruining her reputation. I finally said, "Emily, I love you as my sister, but you have been actively trying to ruin my wedding day since we started planning this. You have one chance to do the right thing or leave." That's when she screamed that I was selfish, controlling, and that Mark and I always team up against her. My parents tried to intervene, but Emily was inconsolable. At that moment, my cousin, who is generally very blunt, told Emily that she needed to either calm down or leave because she was making everyone uncomfortable. Emily stormed out, slammed the door, and refused to come back. The rest of the reception was awkward, but manageable. Several family members came up to me and thanked me for standing up to her, saying it was about time someone set boundaries. Mark was supportive and said he was proud of me for handling it. However, the fallout was immediate and intense. Emily hasn't spoken to me since, and my parents are split. My mom thinks I should have just let it slide for the sake of family harmony, while my dad admits Emily was being unreasonable but is sad about the estrangement. Other relatives are taking sides, and I've been getting messages like, "You ruined the wedding vibe," and "You should have been more forgiving." I feel conflicted. On one hand, I believe I was within my rights to set boundaries and defend my special day. On the other hand, the family drama has been overwhelming, and I can't help but wonder if I could have handled it differently to avoid cutting off a family member. So, AITA for confronting my sister at my wedding and effectively causing her to leave? Additional context. Emily has a history of being dramatic at family events, and this is not the first time she has caused public scenes. She has also tried to apologize afterward in vague ways, but hasn't taken responsibility for her actions. My relationship with Mark and my close friends has improved since the wedding, but family events have been tense, and some relatives refuse to talk about my wedding at all. I tried to compromise multiple times leading up to the wedding, but Emily consistently pushed boundaries. I'm proud that I stood my ground, but I can't escape feeling guilty about how everything played out. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of trying to support her. I, 29F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Emily, 32F. Growing up, she was the golden child, academically brilliant, socially charismatic, and effortlessly popular while I was quieter, more introverted, and often overlooked. Our parents, though loving, often compared us in ways that made me feel invisible. Despite all this, I did my best to support Emily through school, social events, and even minor crises, thinking that one day, our relationship would become more equal and close. When Emily started dating her now fiancé, Mark 34M, about 4 years ago, I was cautiously optimistic. Mark seemed nice enough, and I thought maybe having him in the picture could help bridge the gap between us. At first, everything seemed fine. I tried to spend time with both of them, going to dinners and outings, and I even offered to help with wedding planning when Emily got engaged last year. I wanted to be a supportive sister and part of what should have been one of the happiest times in her life. The trouble started with the guest list. Emily and Mark initially said they wanted an intimate wedding, but over time, the guest list expanded dramatically, and suddenly I found myself under immense pressure. My parents were involved in a lot of planning and insisted that their friends and extended family, some of whom I had never met, be invited. Emily, meanwhile, became increasingly controlling about minor details, often blaming me for perceived lapses in her plans, even when I had no role in them. It wasn't just wedding stress. I noticed a pattern where she would accuse me of laziness, being selfish, or not caring enough about her feelings whenever I disagreed with her, even on small matters. Things reached a tipping point a few months ago. Emily asked me to host her bridal shower at my house, which I agreed to do despite my small apartment and busy schedule. She demanded that I invite specific people she liked, including colleagues of hers whom I didn't know and had no personal connection to. I tried to explain that I couldn't accommodate everyone comfortably, but she was adamant and started criticizing my apartment and my hosting abilities, saying I should figure it out because it was important to her. I did everything I could to make the event happen, but Emily spent the day criticizing the setup, the food, and even my decorations. She later called my parents to complain that I had ruined the shower. I was devastated, but I told myself this was just wedding stress and tried to move on. Around the same time, I started noticing other red flags. Emily expected me to help with a lot of personal tasks, like writing her vows, designing seating charts, and coordinating with vendors, without any formal acknowledgement or compensation. She would repeatedly make last-minute changes and expect me to drop everything to accommodate her. I also learned that she had been venting about me to our mutual friends, portraying me as difficult and unsupportive, even though I had been doing my best to help. It hurt deeply, especially when friends started asking me to make things easier for her or to apologize for misunderstandings that weren't my fault. The final straw came when Emily revealed the wedding itinerary. She had planned a complicated, multi-day event with multiple ceremonies, pre-wedding photo shoots, and themed parties. The schedule required me to be available at almost all hours for last-minute tasks and changes, with zero flexibility. When I tried to negotiate, suggesting that I could help with certain tasks, but not be on call constantly, she became angry and said, "If you can't commit to this, maybe you shouldn't be in my life during the wedding." I was shocked. I realized that she had never intended for me to have a say in any part of the process and had been manipulating my willingness to help into a tool to control me. At this point, I took a step back. I tried to explain calmly that I loved her and wanted her wedding to be wonderful, but I couldn't sacrifice my own mental health to meet her impossible demands. I told her that I would attend the wedding only as a guest, not as a personal assistant or planner. Emily was furious. She accused me of being selfish, uncaring, and trying to ruin her special day. She even implied that I wasn't a good sister and that I didn't love her. I tried reasoning with her, pointing out that my refusal to handle all the logistics didn't mean I didn't care, but she wouldn't listen. Our parents also got involved, pressuring me to help and saying I was letting Emily down and creating family drama. After weeks of this, I made a decision. I told Emily and my parents that I would not attend the wedding at all. I explained that the way she had treated me, combined with the extreme demands and lack of consideration for my life, made it impossible for me to participate without feeling resentful and anxious. I offered to send a gift and a heartfelt letter, but I refused to be physically present in an environment where I was constantly belittled and manipulated. Emily and my parents were livid. Emily said that this was unforgivable and that I was choosing myself over family, while my parents threatened to exclude me from family events in the future. Since then, our relationship has deteriorated significantly. Emily has blocked me on social media and refuses to talk to me. My parents are disappointed and frustrated, but I've been trying to stand firm for my own mental health. Some mutual friends have reached out and said I was justified in protecting myself, while others believe I overreacted and should have put my sister's happiness first. I genuinely tried to support Emily for years, but it feels like my efforts were never appreciated, and I am now questioning whether attending the wedding under those conditions would have been healthy or even safe for me emotionally. I feel guilty for not attending, but I also feel relieved to have set boundaries I desperately needed. I am struggling to reconcile the love I have for my sister with the toxicity of the way she has treated me during this process. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of trying to support her. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancé stay at my house for a week after what happened last time. So, this is going to be a long one, but I want to make sure I give all the context, because honestly, I don't think I'm the asshole here, but everyone in my family seems to think otherwise. I, 32F, live in a medium-sized city, own a 2-bedroom apartment, and have a fairly quiet lifestyle. I like things clean and orderly, and I work from home, which means my personal space is extremely important to me. I also have a brother, Mark, 35M, who is getting married in a few months to his fiancée, Hannah, 30F. Mark and I have always been close, but our relationship is complicated because of how different our personalities are. He's more spontaneous and doesn't really care much about boundaries, while I value structure and predictability. Hannah is nice enough, but I've only known her for about a year. Last summer, Mark and Hannah asked if they could stay at my apartment for a week because they were in town for wedding planning and needed a place to crash. At the time, I hesitated, but I agreed because I wanted to be supportive. Big mistake. From the moment they arrived, it was chaos. Hannah started rearranging my living room furniture without asking, moved my kitchen utensils around, and constantly commented on how cozy my place was, but also how small it felt, which made me uncomfortable. She also insisted on using my Netflix account, my coffee machine, and even my bed at one point because she claimed her back was sore. I politely told her that my bed wasn't an option, and she pouted for a few hours but finally slept on the couch. It wasn't just minor annoyances either. Hannah would invite friends over without asking, and my apartment turned into this semi-public space for her and her friends. My work schedule suffered because she and Mark would stay up late watching TV loudly and playing games, and when I politely asked them to keep it down, they said I was being too uptight and that it was just for a week. On top of all that, she cooked massive meals in my kitchen and left the dishes for me to clean, claiming that she couldn't find where anything went and didn't want to disrupt my system. By the end of the week, I felt completely drained and violated. When they left, I tried to have a calm conversation with Mark about it. I explained that I couldn't host them again because it was stressful and disruptive, and I didn't feel respected in my own home. He rolled his eyes, called me dramatic, and said that Hannah didn't mean any harm and that I should just get over it. I was frustrated, but I let it go at the time because I didn't want to fight. Fast forward to now. Mark and Hannah are coming back to town, and they asked if they could stay again for a week while they handle more wedding arrangements. I immediately said no. I explained that last time was extremely stressful for me and that I cannot host them again. Mark lost it. He started saying things like, "We're family, you can't just turn us away, and you're making things really hard for me and Hannah before the wedding." I told him that my apartment is my sanctuary and that I have to protect my own mental health. I also reminded him of the last time and how disrespectful their behavior was, but he brushed it off, saying I was exaggerating and that Hannah didn't do anything wrong. Hannah also messaged me privately, asking me to reconsider and saying she's really changed and that she would be more careful. I told her that it's not about whether she has changed or not, but about my boundaries. I also explained that I don't feel comfortable having guests for extended periods anymore. She replied with a somewhat passive-aggressive message, implying that I'm being selfish and that family should support each other. Now my entire family is involved. My parents, who I live near, are siding with Mark and Hannah, saying that I should be more accommodating and that this is a special time in their lives. My other siblings have mixed reactions, but most of them think I should just let it slide. I feel like my family doesn't understand that boundaries are not just about being nice. They're about taking care of yourself. I'm perfectly willing to meet Mark and Hannah elsewhere, take them out to dinner, or even host them for a few hours at my place, but a week-long stay is non-negotiable for me. The thing is, I know that by refusing, I might come across as rigid or unsupportive, but after what happened the last time, I just can't do it. I'm worried that this will create more tension with my brother and his fiancée, especially with the wedding coming up, but I feel like giving in would only lead to resentment and more stress. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother and his fiancée stay at my apartment for a week after what happened last time? Or should I just bite the bullet and host them to keep the peace? AITA for confronting my sister at my wedding after years of her undermining me? I, 29F, have always had a complicated relationship with my older sister, Lauren, 34F. Growing up, she was the golden child in our family, smart, charismatic, and always the center of attention. I, on the other hand, was more reserved, and while my parents were supportive, there was always this unspoken comparison. Lauren would constantly one-up me in everything, from school achievements to social situations, and even small things like outfits or hobbies became competitions without her explicitly saying it. My parents often unintentionally reinforced this by praising her loudly and subtly critiquing me. Over the years, I learned to keep my distance and manage my own life, but her behavior never fully went away. She has a habit of making passive-aggressive comments that she frames as jokes. For example, when I got my first promotion at work, she said, "Wow, congratulations. I guess it's nice to see you finally catching up." Or when I bought my apartment, she'd say things like, "That's cute, though it's definitely smaller than mine was at your age." I try to brush it off because she's my sister and I wanted family harmony, but it built up over time. Fast forward a few years. I met my fiancé, Tom, 31M, and things got serious. When we got engaged, I couldn't allow it to continue, especially on such an important day. Tom and my parents were shocked, and the room went silent. Lauren eventually left the room, still upset. Despite the tension, the wedding itself went smoothly after that. Some guests noticed the awkwardness, but most didn't, and the ceremony was beautiful. However, the fallout afterward has been intense. Lauren has barely spoken to me, and when she does, it's with passive-aggressive comments over text. My parents are disappointed, saying I should have been more forgiving and handled it differently, but I feel like I finally drew a necessary line. Now, my extended family is divided. Some relatives support me, saying I was justified in setting boundaries, while others think I embarrassed Lauren and should have waited for a better moment. I've tried reaching out to Lauren to talk calmly, but she refuses. I'm happy with my marriage and felt empowered standing up for myself, but the family tension is painful. So, AITA for confronting my sister so directly at my wedding, knowing it could upset her and my parents, even though I felt it was necessary to protect my own well-being and joy on my wedding day. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after discovering a family secret. I, 28F, have always been close to my older sister, Emily, 32F. Growing up, we had the typical sibling rivalry moments, but we genuinely supported each other through most things. Our parents, while well-meaning, were not great at handling conflict or secrets, which occasionally caused tension, but nothing we couldn't handle, until recently. Emily has been engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 33M, for about a year now. We were all excited for the wedding and had been helping with preparations. I was assigned to assist with decorations and seating arrangements, which I didn't mind at all. A few weeks ago, during a casual brunch with Emily, she mentioned she had spoken to someone from Mark's family to finalize seating. I didn't think much of it until I overheard a phone conversation later that day. Curiosity got the better of me, and I ended up asking Mark's sister about the wedding. She hesitated, but eventually told me something that completely shocked me. It turns out that Mark is actually my half-brother. When I first heard it, I thought she was joking or mistaken, but the more I pressed for details, the more it seemed true. Our father, who passed away when I was 12, apparently had a brief affair with a woman I had never met, and Mark is the son from that affair. The timing lines up perfectly, and several other details made sense when I pieced them together. I tried to confront my mother about it, but she initially denied everything. After a few hours, she reluctantly admitted that it was true, saying she and my father had kept it a secret to protect the family. At this point, I was completely stunned. My sister was dating my half-brother. I couldn't believe this could even happen, and I felt an overwhelming mix of anger, disgust, and betrayal. I didn't tell Emily or Mark anything at first because I wanted to verify everything. I did some digging, confirmed Mark's birth records and our father's involvement, and eventually had an uncomfortably awkward conversation with my mother to get her to admit the full truth. I struggled with what to do. On one hand, I didn't want to destroy my sister's happiness or the wedding. On the other hand, attending would feel morally and emotionally impossible. I tried reasoning with myself, thinking maybe Mark didn't know, and if he did, maybe there was some misunderstanding. But after confronting him directly, he admitted he knew about the connection. He said he didn't see it as a problem, and that he and Emily were in love, and it doesn't matter biologically. I was horrified. I told my sister I couldn't attend the wedding. She was furious, accusing me of being judgmental, controlling, and trying to ruin her life. I tried to explain my perspective, emphasizing the genetic and moral complications, but she refused to listen. She argued that she had never felt more loved or happy, and that I was being selfish for putting my discomfort above her happiness. My parents also pressured me, saying I was overreacting and that Mark is part of the family now, and I should just accept it. I feel torn because I still love my sister, and I don't want to create a permanent rift. But I also can't imagine being in the same room with them exchanging vows. The thought alone makes me physically sick. Since I told her I wasn't coming, my sister has stopped speaking to me, and my parents are disappointed. Some of my friends say I should just forgive and forget, while others say I'm right to step away for my own mental health. I also feel like I might be overreacting, but the thought of this relationship being normalized is too much for me. I've considered going to therapy to deal with my feelings and possibly reaching out to Emily later, but I'm scared she'll never forgive me. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after discovering this family secret? I know it's complicated, but I genuinely feel that my reaction is justified. Yet the way my sister and family treat me makes me question myself constantly. Has anyone else been in a situation where attending a family event felt morally impossible? I want to do the right thing without betraying my own boundaries, but I don't know what that looks like in this scenario. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after years of tension. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F, and we've had a complicated relationship for most of our lives. Growing up, she was always the golden child in the eyes of our parents. She got all the attention, praise, and freedom, while I was constantly expected to meet higher standards. I tried to be understanding, but over time, the resentment built up. I moved out as soon as I could, and for the last few years, we've maintained a polite but distant relationship. We call or message each other occasionally, mostly during holidays or birthdays, but it's far from close. About 6 months ago, Emily got engaged to her boyfriend, Tom. When she told me, I congratulated her and asked when the wedding would be. She said she and Tom wanted a small, intimate wedding at our parents' house because it has sentimental value. She then asked me to host the wedding at my house. This immediately caught me off guard. Hosting a wedding is a massive responsibility, and my house is not particularly large or suited for hosting large events. I told her I wasn't sure if it would be feasible and that I needed to think about it. Emily became increasingly insistent over the next few weeks. She sent messages saying things like, "It would mean so much if you did this for me," and "I really can't imagine my big day anywhere else." I reminded her that I don't live nearby, that my place isn't equipped for such an event, and that organizing a wedding is not something I can take lightly. I even suggested that they look into venues that could accommodate everyone safely and comfortably, but she brushed it off, saying it wouldn't feel right without me hosting. At this point, my frustration began to grow. Hosting a wedding at my house would mean renting tents, chairs, catering, bathrooms, decorations, and basically turning my home into an event space for a day or two. I work full-time and have a very tight schedule. And honestly, I also have health issues that make physical labor taxing. I explained all this to her, trying to be as gentle as possible, but she accused me of not caring about family and being selfish. She even implied that I was being petty because I never cared about her feelings growing up. This hit me hard, because while I do harbor resentment for the way our parents treated us differently, I never thought that refusing to host a wedding would make me appear cruel. As the months went on, her requests escalated. She began sending me lists of vendors, asking me to manage RSVPs, and even implying that my home needed renovations to be wedding ready. I started feeling completely cornered. Hosting this wedding would require me to take weeks off work, spend thousands of dollars, and physically organize something I am not prepared for, all to accommodate a person who has, frankly, treated me dismissively my whole life. After a particularly stressful conversation where she guilt-tripped me, I finally said no. I told her plainly that I would not be hosting her wedding under any circumstances. I suggested again that they look into a proper venue or consider having the ceremony at a location meaningful to both of them, rather than making me responsible for everything. I tried to keep my tone neutral, but I could tell she was upset. The fallout was immediate. Emily called our parents, complaining that I was refusing to support her big day. Our parents took her side, saying I was being unreasonable and needed to put aside old grudges. I explained to them that my house is not a wedding venue and that I cannot take on such a massive responsibility. I also reminded them that over the years, I have accommodated family events at holidays, often putting my own needs aside, but this request is on an entirely different level. My parents didn't seem to understand and accused me of creating drama and being difficult. Emily has since stopped talking to me entirely. I sent a message trying to smooth things over, explaining that I love her and want her to have a beautiful wedding, but that I cannot be responsible for hosting it. She has ignored it, and I haven't heard from her in over a month. My parents are disappointed, and a few extended family members have reached out, implying that I should reconsider because this is her special day. I feel torn. On one hand, I don't want to be estranged from my family. On the other hand, I genuinely feel that hosting this wedding is beyond reasonable, especially given the history and the stress it would cause me. I've offered solutions, but it seems like nothing is acceptable unless I sacrifice my well-being entirely. I also can't shake the feeling that my past grievances with Emily are influencing my decision, though I believe my refusal is primarily based on practicality rather than revenge. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house? I feel like I'm protecting my own health and boundaries, but the way my family is reacting makes me wonder if I'm being overly harsh or unreasonable. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house after she made me feel completely disrespected? I, 32F, have always been very close to my younger sister, Claire, 28F. Growing up, we shared a lot, from our childhood bedroom to our first cars, and even as adults, we maintained a strong bond. I consider myself a generous person and have always gone out of my way to help my family, especially Claire. That being said, a recent situation has caused a massive rift between us, and I'm beginning to wonder if I'm really in the wrong. Claire got engaged about a year ago to her fiancé, Mark, 30M. From the beginning, she made it clear that she wanted a big, extravagant wedding, but with a twist. She wanted it to be hosted at my house. My house isn't a mansion. It's a 3-bedroom suburban home that I bought a few years ago, and I've worked hard to make it comfortable and stylish, but it's definitely not a wedding venue. She said she wanted a homey feel and thought my backyard and living room would be perfect. At first, I tried to be accommodating. I told her that while my house isn't huge, I could help with small gatherings or maybe the rehearsal dinner, but a full wedding would be difficult. She brushed that off and insisted that I could make it work. Over the next few months, she started drawing up elaborate plans, showing me Pinterest boards, floral arrangements, and table layouts that would require renting tents, chairs, tables, and hiring staff. She even sent me contracts from caterers, decorators, and a photographer, all addressed to me as the host. Every time I tried to explain the limitations of my space, she would guilt me, saying things like, "You've always wanted us to feel at home. This is how we can make our dreams come true." Things escalated when she started asking for changes to my property. She wanted to build a temporary stage for the band, have a dance floor in the living room, and even suggested I remove some of my furniture to make more room. I reminded her that this was my personal space and that I couldn't make major renovations for a one-day event. She responded angrily, claiming I was being selfish and that my home was supposed to be a place of love and family, not obstacles. I decided to set clear boundaries. I told her that hosting a wedding at my house was not feasible and that she would need to find a proper venue. She seemed shocked and upset, and the conversations quickly turned into arguments. She accused me of not supporting her dreams, not caring about our family, and even said I was jealous because my house wasn't fancy enough for her vision. The worst incident happened a few weeks later when she showed up at my house unannounced with Mark and a group of her friends. They started measuring my backyard, taking photos, and even discussing where the tables would go without my permission. I asked them to leave immediately, but Claire started yelling at me, saying that I was ruining her wedding and that I should just let her have this one thing. Mar tried to calm her down, but she wouldn't listen. I eventually had to call her friend's parents to pick them up and told her she needed to leave as well. That night, she sent me a long text accusing me of being controlling, unkind, and selfish. She even said she was reconsidering our relationship because I had betrayed her trust. Since then, our communication has been minimal. I've offered alternative ways to help her, like assisting with planning, contributing to the rehearsal dinner, or helping her find a venue, but she keeps rejecting every offer. She has started posting on social media about how stressful it is to plan a wedding without family support, and while she hasn't named me, it's clear who she's referring to. Our parents are upset as well, and they keep pressuring me to apologize and just let her use the house. But I feel like that's unreasonable given how disrespectful she has been. I have friends and colleagues who have been listening to both sides, and opinions are split. Some say I should just give in because it's my sister's big day, while others tell me that setting boundaries is important and that I shouldn't be guilt into doing something that makes me uncomfortable. I'm starting to feel a mixture of sadness, frustration, and anger. I want to support my sister, but I also don't want to be treated as if my home and personal boundaries don't matter. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house, even though she says I'm being unsupportive. AITA for refusing to let my brother move back in after he lost his job and arguing with my parents about it. I, 29F, have always been the responsible one in my family. My younger brother, Jake, 26M, has had a pretty turbulent life and has relied on our parents for support more than I think is healthy. Our parents, in their 60s, have always tried to be accommodating, often bailing him out when he got into trouble. For context, Jake has struggled to maintain steady employment, frequently quitting jobs because of bad management or because he wasn't happy. It's a pattern that has repeated for years. A few months ago, Jake lost his job at a local marketing firm. Apparently, he had conflicts with several coworkers and missed deadlines multiple times. He called me one evening, distraught, and asked if he could move back in with me temporarily while he figured things out. My first reaction was hesitation. I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment, and I share it with my fiancé, Matt, 30M. Our place is comfortable for 2 people, but would be extremely tight with a third, especially someone who tends to be messy and somewhat reckless with finances. I told him I needed to think about it. I knew that agreeing might make me resent him if things went badly, but I also felt guilty. My parents have always been the safety net for him, and I hated to feel like I was abandoning him. That night, I talked to Matt, who was immediately against the idea. He didn't want the stress and tension that would come with having a third person in our small apartment, especially one who has a history of irresponsibility. After discussing it, I called Jake back and explained my concerns. I told him I couldn't offer him a place to stay, but that I would help him look for affordable short-term rentals, assist with his resume, and even drive him to interviews if needed. He didn't take it well. He accused me of turning my back on family and said I was prioritizing my comfort over him. I tried to explain that I wasn't unwilling to help, just unwilling to compromise my own living situation. He stormed off the phone, and I thought that would be the end of it. A week later, Jay called my parents and begged them to let him move in. They were initially hesitant, but he cried and painted a very dire picture, claiming he had nowhere else to go and that I had abandoned him. My parents eventually relented and invited him back to their house. I thought that was the end of the drama, but then things started getting messy. Jake quickly began clashing with my parents. He stayed up late, borrowed money without asking, and criticized their lifestyle and routines. He also expected them to drive him to interviews and cover his expenses, which they started resenting. My parents began calling me almost daily, venting about his behavior and asking why I hadn't forced him to get his act together. I tried to stay neutral, reminding them that it wasn't my responsibility to make him behave, but they were clearly frustrated. At this point, Jake called me again, furious that he had to follow rules in my parents' house and demanding I convince them to give him more freedom. I refused, telling him that boundaries were necessary and that I wasn't going to interfere with my parents' decisions just because he didn't like them. He called me cold and selfish. Things escalated further when my parents called a family meeting. They were upset, saying I had let him down by not allowing him to move in with me, implying that if I had, maybe he wouldn't have caused stress for them. I tried to explain that my apartment was not suitable for him, that I was willing to help in other ways, and that their enabling behavior had contributed to his lack of responsibility. They didn't see it that way. They said I was being harsh and unsupportive, and that I needed to be family rather than setting boundaries. Matt and I have been under a lot of stress because of this. He is upset that my family is putting pressure on me for something that feels entirely reasonable to refuse. He also worries that the tension will escalate further if I continue to defend my decision. I honestly feel like I am doing the responsible thing, setting boundaries and not letting Jake rely on me in a way that would hurt my relationship and well-being. However, every time I talk to my parents, they guilt-trip me, saying I could have prevented Jake's current issues by being more supportive. They hint that by refusing, I am selfish and cold-hearted, which makes me feel like I'm the villain. I can't deny that I feel bad sometimes, but I also feel like I am being rational and fair. The situation has put a real strain on my relationship with my parents, and I'm worried that my brother will hold this against me forever. Matt is supportive of my stance, but even he admits it's difficult to deal with the emotional fallout. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to let my brother move in after he lost his job and sticking to my boundaries, even though it upset my parents? Or should I have just given in to avoid family conflict, despite the practical challenges it would have caused? AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancé take over my mother's funeral arrangements? I, 34F, am currently dealing with a family situation that has completely spiraled out of control, and I honestly don't know if I'm the asshole here. I will try to give all the details because I want to be as transparent as possible. My mother, Margaret, passed away unexpectedly last month. She was 62, and although she had some health issues, none of them were considered critical, so her death came as a shock to all of us. My brother, Alex, 38M, and I were extremely close to her, though our personalities were very different. I've always been the more organized, meticulous one, while Alex has always been more laid back and tends to leave things to others. Before she passed, my mom had mentioned in passing that she didn't want an overly elaborate funeral. She wanted a small gathering, maybe just immediate family and close friends, with a short ceremony at her favorite local park. I didn't think much of it at the time, but after she died, I remembered her wishes and felt strongly about respecting them. Here's where things got complicated. Alex's fiancée, Vanessa, 36F, has been with him for about 2 years. When we were sorting out funeral details, Vanessa insisted that we needed to honor Mom properly and that the park idea was insufficient. She kept pushing for a large, expensive funeral at a fancy chapel, complete with a catered reception, floral arrangements, and even a live string quartet. I tried to reason with her. I told her that Mom specifically wanted something small and that we couldn't go against her wishes. Vanessa told me that I was being insensitive and that I was trying to control everything because I don't want anyone else to be involved. She said that she would handle everything if I stepped aside, claiming that she could give Mom the send-off she deserved. I immediately said no. I felt like Vanessa was overstepping, and I didn't trust her judgment when it came to my mother's wishes. Alex, unfortunately, didn't take a side at first. He said he didn't want to upset either of us, so he avoided making any decisions. This left me stuck in the middle, trying to plan a funeral while defending my mother's wishes against someone who wasn't even related to her. Vanessa started sending me long emails, texts, and even messages on social media about what she thought would be more appropriate. She insisted that she was going to book venues and caterers herself, despite my repeated refusal. She told me that I was being selfish and denying Alex and the family a proper chance to mourn in style. The situation escalated when Alex finally decided to side with Vanessa. He said he wanted a larger ceremony and that he was tired of what he called my overly controlling approach. He said that because he was the firstborn son, he felt he should have a say in the arrangements, and Vanessa's suggestions made sense to him. This was devastating because I felt like I was not only disregarding Mom's wishes, but also being blamed for them. At this point, I refused to speak to Alex or Vanessa about the funeral. I contacted a funeral director who I had known for years and who was aware of my mother's wishes. I explained the situation and asked them to help me organize a small ceremony in the park, exactly as Mom wanted. I also informed them that only immediate family and a few close friends should be invited. The funeral director agreed and helped me handle everything discreetly. On the day of the funeral, Vanessa showed up with her own plans. She had brought flowers that were not approved, tried to set up a catering table, and even started playing a pre-recorded classical piece that my mom never liked. I politely asked her to stop and reminded her again of what my mother wanted. Alex didn't intervene. He just stayed silent, and Vanessa eventually left in a huff. After the funeral, the fallout has been brutal. Alex has been distant and hasn't spoken to me, except through brief, tense texts. Vanessa has publicly accused me of ruining Alex's chance to properly mourn and trying to erase my mother from her own life. Several extended family members have taken Vanessa's side, saying that I was too rigid and that funerals are supposed to be about celebrating life, not following rigid instructions. I still feel like I did the right thing because my mom's wishes were clear, and I believe it was my responsibility to honor them. However, I keep questioning myself because of the backlash. Alex barely talks to me. Vanessa keeps posting passive-aggressive things online about how controlling I am, and even some cousins have distanced themselves. I feel guilty because I want my brother to be okay, but I also feel like I couldn't compromise my mother's wishes for the sake of someone who wasn't even related to her. So, Reddit, here's the question. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancé take over my mother's funeral arrangements and insisting on following Mom's wishes? I know this story is long, but I wanted to give the full picture so you could understand the family dynamics and why the situation escalated the way it did. AITA for refusing to give my sister the house deposit I saved for 8 years after she announced her dream wedding plans. I am 32F. My sister Lena is 29F. Growing up, our parents were big on fairness, at least on paper. Same allowances, same curfews, same rules. In practice, Lena has always been louder, more emotional, and better at making everything feel urgent. If she cried, people moved. If I complained, I was told I was the mature one and could handle it. I moved out at 18, worked through college, and have been saving aggressively since my first real job. I don't drink much, I don't travel often, and I drive a car that is old enough to vote. My long-term goal has been to buy a small house or condo on my own. I've been very open about this for years. Everyone in my family knows I have a dedicated house fund and that it took sacrifices to build. Lena, on the other hand, has always lived a little more spontaneously. She's not irresponsible, but she prioritizes experiences. Trips, concerts, nice clothes, eating out. She said many times that money comes and goes, and you can't take it with you. That's fine, it's her life. Last year, she got engaged to her boyfriend of 2 years. I was genuinely happy for her. Then the wedding planning started, and it escalated fast. Destination bachelorette, designer dress, live band, custom florals, the whole thing. Our parents quietly told her to scale it back because they couldn't contribute much. She agreed outwardly, but the plans didn't actually change. About 3 months ago, she invited me over to talk. I thought she wanted help DIYing decorations or venting. Instead, she laid out a spreadsheet of wedding costs and told me she was short about $40,000. She said she didn't want to start her marriage in debt, and that since I wasn't married and didn't have kids, I was in the best position to help. I laughed at first because I genuinely thought she was joking. She wasn't. She said she knew I had the money saved and that I wasn't using it yet anyway. She framed it as a loan, but couldn't give me a timeline for paying it back. She said once they were married and settled, it would work itself out. I told her no, calmly. I said that money is for a down payment, that the housing market is brutal, and that pulling that amount would set me back years. She immediately got upset and said I was choosing a hypothetical house over her real wedding. Things blew up from there. She accused me of not valuing family, of always judging her choices, of being selfish with money. I reminded her that I never comment on how she spends and that this was a massive ask. She cried, said she would do it for me. I didn't respond to that because, honestly, I don't believe she would or could. Our parents got involved next. They asked if I could compromise by giving a smaller amount, maybe $20,000. I said no again. I offered to help in other ways, like covering a specific vendor or helping them rework the budget. That wasn't acceptable. According to them, writing a big check would solve everything. Since then, the family dynamic has been awful. Lena barely speaks to me. When she does, it's cold and clipped. She's told relatives that I'm hoarding money and letting her wedding fall apart. An aunt called me and said that weddings are once in a lifetime and homes can wait. A cousin said I should just rent forever if it means keeping peace. What really got to me was when Lena said, during a family dinner, that if I loved her, I want her to have the day she's dreamed of since she was a little girl. I said, probably too sharply, that I've dreamed of stability since I was a little girl, and no one ever offered to fund that for me. The table went silent. My mom cried. My dad said I didn't have to be cruel. Now the wedding is 4 months away. They haven't canceled anything, but I know they're stressed about money. I feel guilty because technically I could help. I just don't want to sacrifice my future for an event that will be over in a day. At the same time, I hate being the villain in my own family, and I'm scared this will permanently damage my relationship with my sister. So I'm stuck between feeling justified and feeling like I've broken some unspoken rule about family support. AITA for refusing to give her the money, even knowing I could. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she reassigned the role she promised me to someone else, and then told me I was being dramatic about titles. I am 31F. My sister is 29F. Growing up, it was always the two of us against the world. Our parents divorced when we were teenagers, our dad moved away, and our mom worked constantly. I helped raise my sister in a lot of ways, from driving her to school events to helping with homework and being the person she cried to when things went wrong. We were genuinely close, not just holiday close. She used to say I was her best friend. When she got engaged last year, she called me first after her fiancé. She cried on the phone and told me she couldn't imagine getting married without me standing next to her. She asked me to be her maid of honor. Not asked in a casual way, but in a very emotional, heartfelt way, talking about how I'd always been there for her and how important it was. I said yes immediately. I was honored and excited. From that point on, I did everything a maid of honor typically does and more. I helped her tour venues, gave input on vendors, planned her engagement party, and later her bridal shower. I spent a lot of my own money without being asked to, because I wanted things to be special. I took days off work. I dealt with family drama, so she wouldn't have to. She thanked me often, told me she didn't know what she'd do without me, and repeatedly referred to me as her maid of honor to friends and family. About 4 months before the wedding, she asked me to meet her for coffee. I thought it was to talk about final details or bachelorette plans. Instead, she told me she had been thinking a lot and decided she wanted her fiancé's sister to be her maid of honor instead. Apparently, her future in-laws felt it would be symbolic to blend families, and her fiancé's sister had expressed feeling left out. My sister said she didn't want any drama and thought the easiest solution was to switch things around. She told me I would still be very important and could be a bridesmaid, just not the maid of honor. She said it like she was offering me a consolation prize. I was stunned. I didn't yell or cry in the cafe, but I did ask why she hadn't talked to me earlier or considered how this would feel after months of me doing the role already. She said she knew I'd be understanding because I'm more mature and that her fiancé's sister really needs this. That stung because it felt like my feelings mattered less specifically because I'm reliable. I told her I was hurt and needed time to process. She immediately got defensive and said I was making it about me and that it was just a title, nothing had to change between us. But things already had changed. She had taken something she gave me, something that clearly meant more than a word, and handed it to someone else to keep the peace. Over the next few weeks, she slowly stopped including me in planning. Group chats changed. Decisions were made without me. Her fiancé's sister took over tasks I had already started. When I asked a question, I was told it was handled. Meanwhile, I was still expected to pay for my dress, attend events, and smile through everything. I finally told my sister that I didn't feel comfortable attending the wedding anymore. not as a form of punishment, but because being there felt emotionally painful and humiliating. I told her I loved her, but watching someone else step into a role I had already been living for months felt awful, especially knowing I was pushed aside to appease other people. She exploded. She accused me of trying to ruin her wedding and abandoning her when she needed me. She told our mom, who said I was being selfish and that family should come before pride. Friends are split. Some say I should just go, stand in the back, and be there for my sister. Others say she used me and discarded me once I was no longer convenient. What hurts most is that my sister keeps saying, "I didn't think you'd care this much," as if that somehow makes it okay. I feel like my role in her life was reduced to whatever caused the least friction, and once I stopped being the easy option, I became the problem. I haven't gone no contact. I told her I'm open to talking after the wedding, but I won't attend. She says that decision will permanently damage our relationship, and that I'll regret missing such an important day. So AITA for refusing to go to my sister's wedding after she replaced me as maid of honor, expected me to be fine with it. AITA for refusing to apologize to my sister after I ruined her engagement dinner by leaving early and taking the gift with me. I am 31F and my sister Maya is 29F. We have always had a complicated relationship. She is charismatic, loud, and very comfortable being the center of attention. I am quieter and more private. And growing up, I was often told I was too sensitive whenever I tried to explain why something she did hurt me. As adults, we get along in short doses, but I keep boundaries for my own sanity. Maya got engaged about 3 months ago to her boyfriend of a year, Eric. I do not dislike Eric, but I also do not know him well. Their relationship moved fast, which raised some eyebrows in the family. But everyone kept those thoughts to themselves. Maya announced she wanted to host a formal engagement dinner at a restaurant and invited close family and friends. She made it very clear this was not a casual celebration and that she expected people to dress nicely, bring gifts, and be fully present. About 2 weeks before the dinner, Maya called me and asked if I could help cover some of the cost because the restaurant required a minimum spend. I was surprised since she and Eric both work decent jobs, but she said it would mean a lot and that as her sister I should want to contribute. I told her I could not help with the restaurant bill, but I would bring a thoughtful gift. She sounded annoyed, but said fine. The night of the dinner, I arrived on time with a wrapped gift. It was a custom framed illustration of the place they first met, something Maya had once said she loved when she saw a similar piece online. The dinner started fine, but as the night went on, Maya began making comments that made me uncomfortable. She joked about how I was still single at my age and asked the table if anyone wanted to set me up. People laughed, and I forced a smile. Then she brought up a very painful breakup I went through 2 years ago, sharing details I had explicitly asked her never to mention again. She framed it as a funny story about how dramatic I had been. I pulled her aside quietly and asked her to stop. I told her I was uncomfortable and that I felt embarrassed. She rolled her eyes and said I was being too serious and that this night was not about me. I said I understood, but that basic respect would be nice. She told me if I could not handle jokes, I should not have come. I went back to the table and tried to power through, but then Eric gave a toast and made a comment about how Maya had always been the responsible one compared to me, saying I was still figuring life out. I do not know if Maya prompted him, but she laughed and squeezed his hand. At that point, I felt like I was going to cry. I quietly stood up, said I was not feeling well, and left some cash on the table for my portion of the meal. Here is where things escalated. In my emotional state, I took the gift with me. My reasoning was that I did not want something I put thought and care into sitting there while I felt humiliated. I did not make a scene, I just left. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages from Maya, my parents, and even an aunt. Maya accused me of trying to punish her and said I stole an engagement gift to make a point. She said leaving early was already rude, but taking the gift crossed a line and embarrassed her in front of everyone when people noticed. My parents told me I should apologize to keep the peace and return the gift because engagement dinners are stressful and Maya did not mean any harm. I responded that I would not apologize unless Maya acknowledged what she said and how it made me feel. I also said I would reconsider giving the gift if she could speak to me respectfully. Maya replied that I was making her engagement about myself, and that if I had issues, I should have sucked it up for one night. She said she no longer even wants the gift because it is tainted. Now my family is divided. Some say Maya was out of line and that I had a right to leave. Others say that regardless of hurt feelings, you do not take back a gift, and that I should have waited until after the dinner to address things. I'm starting to wonder if taking the gift was petty and undermined my valid feelings. So AITA for leaving early and taking the engagement gift with me, and for refusing to apologize without an acknowledgement of how I was treated. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she reassigned my role and gave my speech to someone else. I, 32F, have always been close to my younger sister, Lily, 29F. We grew up in a pretty chaotic household, and for most of our childhood it felt like it was the two of us against the world. When our parents divorced, she slept in my room for months. While I moved away for college, she cried harder than my mom. So when Lily got engaged last year, I was genuinely thrilled for her. About 10 months ago, she asked me to be her maid of honor. I cried, said yes immediately, and threw myself into it. I helped her pick the venue, went dress shopping multiple times, organized her bachelorette weekend, handled group chats, smoothed over fights between bridesmaids, and even loaned her money when some deposits came up earlier than expected. I never complained because I wanted her day to be perfect. The first weird moment happened about 4 months ago when Lily casually mentioned that her fiancé's sister, Megan, 27F, was feeling a little left out. Megan had only met Lily a handful of times before the engagement, but apparently she was very sensitive and felt like she wasn't being included enough. Lily asked if I would mind sharing some maid of honor responsibilities with Megan. I was surprised, but I said sure, thinking it meant helping with decorations or something minor. Instead, things slowly shifted. Megan started being included in every decision while I was looped in less. Lily would say things like, "Megan already handled that," or "Megan thought this would be better." I still paid for most of the bachelorette weekend, but Megan got publicly thanked for organizing it. While I brought this up gently, Lily said I was being territorial and that weddings were about family unity. 2 months before the wedding, Lily told me she had made a change to the lineup. She said it would be easier if Megan was officially the maid of honor and I was a bridesmaid instead. She framed it as symbolic and said it didn't really matter. I was hurt, but I swallowed it because I didn't want to add stress. I told her I wish she had talked to me first, but that I'd support her. Then came the final straw. About 3 weeks ago, Lily called me and said she wanted me to review the maid of honor speech Megan had written because Megan was nervous about public speaking. I was confused and asked what she meant. Lily laughed awkwardly and said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, Megan is giving the speech now. It'll mean a lot to my in-laws. You understand, right?" I didn't. I had already written a speech. Lily had asked me months ago to talk about her childhood and what she meant to me. I had spent weeks on it, revising it, practicing it, crying while writing parts of it. It wasn't just a speech, it was my way of honoring our relationship. I told Lily this hurt me deeply. She responded by saying I was making her wedding about myself, and that speeches were just formalities. She also said Megan's family would appreciate hearing from someone on their side. I pointed out that there were already multiple speeches from the groom's family, and that I was her sister. Lily snapped and said that if I couldn't be supportive, maybe I shouldn't be in the wedding at all. I took a few days to cool off. During that time, Lily didn't reach out. Instead, our mom called me and said Lily was devastated and that I was being dramatic. My mom said I should just show up, smile, and remember that this wasn't about me. I asked my mom if she would be okay being pushed aside at my wedding, and she said it wasn't the same. A week later, Lily texted me a schedule for the wedding day that had me listed simply as bridesmaid. No special role, no speech, no mention of our relationship at all. Megan was listed as maid of honor, speech giver, and even the person helping Lily get ready, something Lily and I had always talked about doing together. I finally told Lily that I wasn't comfortable attending anymore. I said I loved her, but that being there would be painful and that I felt erased. She replied that I was selfish, jealous, and punishing her for trying to keep the peace with her new family. She said everyone would ask where I was and that I was embarrassing her. Since then, Half my relatives have reached out telling me to suck it up, that weddings make people crazy, and that I'll regret missing it. A few friends agree with me and say Lily treated me terribly. I'm sitting here wondering if I'm really throwing away my relationship with my sister over a speech and a title, or if this is about something bigger, like realizing that I don't matter to her the way she matters to me. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after being demoted and having my role given to someone else. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.